So I've been pretty busy lately. For the past 2 months, I've been traveling around the States recording interviews and B-roll for upcoming documentaries on topics such as Hitbox, Max and Yo video games, Tough Love Arena, and CEO. But one of the projects I'm also really excited to be working on is a full documentary on Skullgirls. I got to talk with community members about topics such as pivotal community moments, Skullgirls home at Combo Breaker, Skullgirls mobile, and many more. We got to showcase some of this footage at Callisto's One More Once event. This video is a compilation of those segments just in case you missed the action this weekend. And before we get to it, I just want to remind you all that we do have a shop with limited edition Skullgirls merch such as tees, hoodies, and posters over at combobreaker.org/shop. These pre-orders will only be open until November 12th, so make sure you get in there now. So kick back and relax and enjoy the segments, and look forward to the full Skullgirls doc sometime next year. Enjoy.
I think in fighting games, there's a cadence within releases where characters start seeming referential to other characters, and not just in movesets, but in how they look and how they should be expected to play. And Skullgirls managed to really avoid that. There are characters that serve functions within the game, but for the most part, the moves, the look of those moves, the interactions of those moves are all very almost unique to Skullgirls.
It was definitely unique in its style as well. It really plays off of really specifically like American animation. So it just had a unique art style that had, influences and references that everybody that played it and bought it could recognize and, identify with, but was absent in every other fighting game that existed, right? So you have Peacock, that is basically a 1920s Disney character. You have Painwheel, who's just this kind of grotesque flying monstrosity that's just all over the place. Just super unique, but super familiar all at once.
I think from perspective of playing, I like Cerebella a lot because she's straightforward, yet also can do it all. You say a grappler, but in a game that only launched with 8 characters, every character had to do more than one archetype. We often think of this character's good at counter hitting, or this character's good at grappling. But even the grappler could do crazy other things that you would normally associate with a rushdown or a zoning. One of the benefits of the small roster was that no matter who you picked, you were going to get something of a well-rounded game plan. There are going to be strengths, there are going to be weaknesses, but with Cerebella, I found a happy medium of doing all the things I like to do.
Yeah, I have a favorite. My favorite character is Eliza, and that's because she has this really cool mechanic where she's a skeleton. She has this parasite inside of her, and it has hyper armor, and she can call it out because her entire body is made out of blood, and she can manipulate that blood. She's basically like a bloodbender. And Sekhmet is hyper armor, which means that if someone comes at Sekhmet, then they have to sweep, or they have to grab, or they have to snap her. Otherwise, Sekhmet wins the engagement. And that is so nasty to do against people who don't know to snap or grab or sweep the skeleton. It's just really oppressive. They'll just sit there pressing buttons and you'll win, and you're like, what are you doing?
Valentine is my favorite by far. I mean, it's everything that I consider cool, which is, ninjas and sexy nurses are both things that I'm large fans of. I really like that there are archetypes that are distinct from each other, but they also kind of call back to older, you have Philia being your Magneto, and it's the type of thing where if you have played older teen games, you can sort of pick up the characters. And then over time, they've sort of added more wacky things, right? You have Eliza with her armor, and you have Big Band with his parry, and I think that there's enough flexibility to play the game how you want, which is the biggest part of the games. You could run a well-rounded solo character like Fortune. You could run a character that's not as well-rounded, but just does crazy damage like Big Band. And you can compete with people who have well-thought-out teams with all these grimy assist setups and things like that. And yeah, the cast just sort of lets you play the game how you feel like, rather than having a best way to play the game, which I think is the coolest part about it.
Skullgirls allows you to do custom assists, which is probably the best thing inside of video games ever, which means that you can pick any moveset out of what your character can do in terms of inputs, with the exception being supers. You can do all of those and set that to be your assist inside of the game. So if a character has a move where they're coming out and they wiggle their fingers in front of their ears, then that is an assist that you can make, and you can build your entire team composition around that. And I think that's why consistently you'll see players that are very, very comfortable in Skullgirls always come back to it because they just want to kind of tease, well, what if I do this? What if I build this? What if I do this? What is my opponent going to do? How's my opponent going to react to this specific type of team if I put them in these specific situations? That's really unique to Skullgirls.
Surgery.
So there was a charity race, so whichever community raised enough money, that community's game would become a main game at EVO. And it was between Melee and Skullgirls, and it was heartbreaking. It was very close for a while, and then in the final moments, it seems like the Melee community pulled out all the stops and ran away with it. That sort of competition basically just leaves everybody bitter. Unless your game wins, you're just super bitter, and the Skullgirls community was pretty bitter about it.
Every portion of the game was discussed ad nauseum, and I frankly don't remember it being an incredibly pleasant time, especially with how it ended. It didn't so much as leave a sour taste in my mouth, so much as it just made me, I guess, appreciate the audience and people that already knew they wanted to enjoy it.
The fallout was the Skullgirls community didn't really trust EVO, and they did not consider EVO to be their tournament mecca the way that everyone else did. And then along came Combo Breaker taking over UFGT, and Rick had the idea of the games that go on main stage are whoever has the most entrants. And Skullgirls was like, let's make this our major.
When Combo Breaker started up, there was a real sense of, if your community shows up for this tournament will support your community. And I think that after a long time of not being at EVO, of kind of being the ignored game of the scene at large, the community really saw that from Combo Breaker and appreciated it.
Our event was rooted in beliefs coming out of the Ultimate Fighting Game tournament, and honestly the Midwest as a whole a little bit, which is anybody who plays a game should get to play a game, and if there's enough people that want to play the game, it should be a featured game, and if that attracts even more people to that game, then that featured game should have the ability to be treated like an attraction. So the Skullgirls community, I think, looked at Combo Breaker, which was espousing that ethos as loudly as I could proclaim it at the time, and went, well, if that's true, if we believe that to be true, let's test it. And so they did, and they came and they tested it, and they came in mass.
It was almost directly because of Kai and Ken and Black's activity inside of the community that Combo Breaker came to be. We started saying, okay, why don't we make a list of all the events we're going to go to for Skullgirls every single year? So even if they offer Skullgirls, if it's not on this list, the community's not going to be there. So if you really want to enter a tournament and you really want to play with people inside the community, you have to come to everything on this list. And Kai came up with that idea. And after that, we started kind of focusing all of our attention specifically on certain events that would promise us stream time for top 16 or top 8. And they would also guarantee us that we would have a pop bonus or something. So we would only go to events like that, and there would only be 4 or 5 of them throughout the year. And that became the Skullgirls Tour, which is what I organized and ran for 2 years. To be very honest with you, Rick is a really awesome person, first and foremost, as you know. But he was also the only tournament organizer that took time out of his day to be inside of our forums and actively have conversations with us every single time. And that helped a lot of people, and that also helped a lot of people associate Combo Breaker as a force for good, in addition to Combo Breaker promising us main stage if we broke a certain number, which we did, and then we got it, and everyone was like, that's Skullgirls on the main stage. It was a really big deal to all of us. So it's like, when we broke 100 people for the first time at Combo Breaker and we got to be up there on that main stage, before all the super glitzy lights and everything, it was just nice. It was just really, really nice and comfy. And it felt like we mattered.
I forget how many people, I know it was well over 100 that year, came together, and that first Combo Breaker, we had them on the main stage. We had Saturday Night Assault that myself and Kai and a couple other people put together. So it was just a really kind of coming out party for the game, where it finally got to be the big game 2 to 3 years after it came out.
Because of how well we were able to integrate with Combo Breaker and how well those tournaments were going, it became really clear for a number of years that if you could only go to one tournament, you should go to Combo Breaker. If you're a Skullgirls player and you've only got one, budget for one, time for one, whatever, clear out that day and go to Combo Breaker.
Thanks for putting on a show, and thanks to all of you for showing up and watching. Yo! Good night, Chicago!
So Kill All Instinct is a local player who became a local commentator and personality, who has a practiced voice and became an in-game character voice. And so you can play Skullgirls right now, and you can hear Beowulf yelling this, that, and whatever, and what you're hearing is Kai.
Yes! Oh yeah!
Even at that time, I was very familiar with like audio production, right? I'd done music for years, really. Even that was sort of winding down because I was moving on from that phase of my life, being young and I can be on the road all the time, to like trying to do something else different. I saw the character and I was like, what I had in my head, I just decided to record.
Now this is what I'm talking about. Let's wrestle.
Enough people at Lab Zero at the time said, yes, it does sound like that in my head as well. They were like, why don't you audition? And I was like, get out of town. I can do that? So yeah, I said, I'll audition then, fine. Got the script, I did the audition, and apparently I was the best one.
That was crazy. I remember, commentating with him at, I think it was like Frosty Festing 6 or 7, and he was just like another guy in the community. Obviously a very noticeable guy. Once again, it's so wonderful to be a part of a community that plays a game that finds its talent and its resources out in the community and use them to the best of their ability. And I think that really shines through on things like the voice of Beowulf.
I mean, for us at the time, we had already been working together on Skullgirls content for, a couple years at that point. And I think any time, even though we, work within the games industry and we work with the publishers and the developers a lot, there's something that will always be cool about a friend of yours taking part in the game. But for the most part in Chicago, where we have Iron Galaxy and we have NetherRealm, usually those people are like combat designers or artists or QA testers or things like that. It was one of the first times we had a friend who was like in the game, and then when you see him, you can be like, do the thing, make the Beowulf noise. It's similar to the sprites, right, that they did for the Evo champs. My friend is just in the game permanently. That never goes away. There'll always be an archive of that, which I think is mega cool.
And Kai has also been part of Combo Breaker from our first year, because our first trailer, when we riffed on the Warriors, that voice acting is Kai.
Killers, come out to play!
And so he, like Skullgirls, has been part of what we do from day one, and since he's also part of this region and also another family man, there's just a lot within Kai I find easy to appreciate as a person. And so it's been cool having him kind of be part of Skullgirls' growth at CB.
I think Skullgirls understands that character more than that character is understood by many forms of media. I mean, frankly speaking, it's impossible to separate Beowulf from how I chose to portray Beowulf, because they let me do almost whatever I want. And so the character is a bit of me and also not, but that means that the character is not always what he wants to be, but he doesn't stop trying to be that. I think it's very cynical for a lot of people who reach a certain age to feel like the time they spent trying to be somebody worth being didn't work. And I think what I like about Beowulf is that he's not particularly smart, nor is he particularly self-aware, but he's very honest to himself. He's very honest with other people. You don't have to work very hard to read what Beowulf the character is thinking or feeling. And he's a goober. He's a real, like, you shake your head at him like, wow, how could you not know that? But you never have to think, is he gonna do something bad? That's what I think I like most about Beowulf, is that I don't think I have any interest in playing a character who is super smart or who knows it all or who's got a plan. I think the most I liked about Beowulf, and what I really liked about his story mode, was that you could just count on him to be a good person who didn't want to lie to himself. That's the most appealing part to it. You have to be okay with yourself. And there's probably nobody more okay with themselves in that game than Beowulf, even if that's not always the best thing.
Everything I say is a catchphrase.
I'm biased because it was my stream, but the first Saturday Night Salt, I don't think anyone knew the format while we were playing because we all got blasted. We all, if it was the first 24-hour venue, we partied. We had a Skullgirls party, very hard. And it was just a ton of fun.
Oh!
What? Swiftbox, take it easy.
Kai decided to run a bunch of salty matches on stream. And this isn't new or anything, but it's my favorite Skullgirls moment of all time. A tournament organizer by the name of Broken Loose was talking a bunch of mess about how free I was online. We played at Combo Breaker 2016. Before we played, because I thought I was gonna get washed, before we played, when I realized it was a big production and stream and everything like that, I was stressed, I'm horrified. I refused to shake this man's hand. I do not shake his hand. It's a whole thing. And he does this whole dramatic, oh, and the camera zooms in and everyone's like, oh my God. All I'm thinking after I get completely and totally blown up after the first round is that I need to put on a good face, because if I lose this, I'm just gonna be a loser for the remainder of my time in the community. If I lose this, never bring it up ever again, right? But I don't lose. I reverse 5-1 him. I immediately win the next 5-1. I completely downloaded him. And the very last game that I won was a pixel victory. So, it felt really nice.
It's over! It's over! Oh my God! She did it!
I think for individual matches and kind of talking about the longevity of the game, the comeback at Combo Breaker 2019, the Big Band Level 5 comeback was like, you could hear it in Kai's voice, right?
Oh! He might do it! He might actually build him 5 meters. This would be fantabulous! Sir!
Oh no! He did it!
Holy shit!
What a comeback!
I would try to watch the top 8s associated with Combo Breaker. Those probably had the highest energy, the highest stakes with regards to, people watching and people getting invested in it. And even though Skullgirls has a clear performer in Sonic Fox didn't win all of those. Those top 8 matches in Combo Breaker are worth watching almost every one of them. If you're a Skullgirls player and you're looking to really see the heart of the community and the skill and the passion, then watch those top 8s. Frosty's a lot like that too. CO Otaku's a lot like that too. But for me, I think Combo Breaker probably represented the pinnacle of in-person hype when it came to Skullgirls events.
This could be it!
All he has to do is chip out. He's got
first the laser!
Chip!
And
Guaranteed! TJ wins it! TJ is the first Combo Breaker champion not named Sonic Fox. He's still a Fox, but that's fine.
I think Combo Breaker has become one of the most visible and kind of most treasured Skullgirls brackets. It's one of the ones that when you win, it matters. And I know what I'm supposed to really love then is the storylines around Sonic or Swift or even the incredible variety of commentators that we've tried to have. What always sticks to me is things like Callisto and Saturday Night Salt, or Kai Kennedy running around with his family screaming Beowulf lines over the crowd in a way that I could hear somewhere else in the venue. And then we have had enough player and developer and publisher support to be able to do presentations for Skullgirls that I don't think are super common. So being able to watch the game on a 30-foot screen surrounded by lights with people just yelling and screaming and holding up printouts of memes on popsicle sticks and waving it around like it's a sports show. Those are incredible memories. So I think Hidden Variable in Autumn did something that I've only really seen NRS do, which is take a fighting game that has a fandom and apply it to a new medium, in this case, a mobile game, in a way that is still truthful to what that fandom expects from a combat experience and a storyline experience, and then kind of surpasses that expectation. I think Skullgirls Mobile is probably the finest fighting game on mobile that is trying to capture not just what it is to play a fighting game, but also what is expected from a mobile game.
It's a wonderful take on mobile fighting games. Not that I've played a bunch of them, but it's It really captures the sort of Skullgirls essence of like the cool characters and combos, but combining the aspects of what you might expect out of a mobile game. It seems like it was always kind of just like bubbling under the surface and almost like a totally separate community that if you weren't paying attention, it would just be ignored.
I have had multiple just random, you get the notification of a new YouTube comment and it says, I came from Skullgirls Mobile. I didn't know this game existed. It's sick. And you're just like, wow, the mobile game's actually like its own entity, right? There's people who only play that. They didn't even know there was like a console/PC fighting game that stemmed from.
I didn't realize how big the mobile community was until the very first time I commentated a Skullgirls mobile event, kind of. Like I was commentating for some event with Skullgirls, and we were giving out mobile codes, and I think the chat jumped up like another 400, 500 viewers just from saying we're giving out a mobile code. It is incredibly, incredibly big inside of Central and South America. It's kind of ridiculous, to be very honest with you. Huge fan base for the mobile game in particular in South America. And the benefit of it being the same frames, the same ecosystem, the same feeling, is that a lot of those people show up for Skullgirls console events. And it's just a bunch of people who feel passionately about Skullgirls showing up for a fun Skullgirls event. That's sick. That's awesome when you can do that. And that's what it feels like when you have a whole contingent, a whole sort of sub-community in this community show up to something like an online event. Just a bunch of South American Skullgirls fans show up, and it helps the energy so much. I love seeing that.
A great example of this is we had Skullgirls Mobile on site at CB. They were giving away cards and special trinkets and kind of early access. And people came to CB to go to that table. Plenty of people come for the tournaments and the presentation scale and Gekio's popcorn, but they don't necessarily show up and go, I came here specifically to visit this table. Oh, the rest of this I guess is cool too. And I think that's an incredible thing that Skullgirls has that even some of its bigger peers in market do not.
Little did we know it was funding this whole operation to keep it afloat and now to help provide us with brand new content for the console game.
The Skullgirls mobile game is almost 100% responsible for the revival of Skullgirls Second Encore, because the DLC sales and specifically the microtransactions inside of Skullgirls Mobile, the CEO had stated inside of a video interview done with Kai Kennedy that if the mobile game was successful, the fighting game would also become more successful and get DLC. And then it happened, and everybody was like, wow.
Now we're at the latest iteration of the game with Autumn and Hidden Variable and the new Future Club continuing to push it forward in a capacity where I really don't think this game has an end point.
All in a day's work.